Welcome to Select Board meeting for Monday, July 16th, 2018. We should probably approve the agenda to start. Call a meeting to order and approve the agenda. Is there any additions or changes?
Two additions. I've got another parking issue to talk about. We can just add that on to letter D. And then there's a request for, well, it's an advance request for a license to serve beer at a softball tournament on August 4th and 5th. And the person is kind of asking if you're disposed to doing it, and if you are, he'll go through the process of formally applying, and you can deal with that at your next meeting.
But down here.
Yeah, so just put liquor license on the agenda, and we can talk about it then.
Is there any kind of update or just how the police rollout's been? Can we add that, or is there anything to really report at this point?
We can add it.
Okay. Yeah, I just would like to see if we have any.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, I take a motion to approve the agenda then with those changes.
So moved.
Second?
I'll second that.
Okay. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Before we begin, you kind of stole my thunder there, Mark. I wanted to congratulate Mark Mateer on his exceptional job with the state police issue, as well as working with Bill to bring this thing to fruition.
Thank you.
We've heard some positive feedback already about it, and I think it's going to be good for the town, so on both sides.
I've heard the same.
Yeah, so kudos to both of you. Okay, we'll move forward with approving the consent agenda then, which is just the minutes of the July 2nd meeting.
I'll make a motion that we accept the consent agenda items as presented.
Okay.
I'll second that.
All right, Nat seconds. No further discussion. All those say aye, please.
Aye.
Aye.
Public. Not much public here today, Herschel.
Been a while since I've been here, I apologize.
Yeah. Well, it's good to see you anyway. Okay, Bill, we'll move right into
Okay, thanks.
ballgame.
So the first item of business here is to introduce the board and the public by way of the camera, I guess, to Nick Nadeau. Nick is the newly appointed Recreation Director, came on a couple of weeks ago, has been working with Deb, and we all thought it'd be a good idea for Nick to come in and meet the board. He has hit the ground running and has met the recreation staff and maybe knows most of their names by now. That's a challenge in the summer because we have about 55 time cards extra to sign every week, it seems. Not 55 more every week, but just 55 this time of year that we normally don't have. But Nick is a recent master's. You actually graduated yet? Okay. Nick is a recent master's recipient from Johnson State College, soon to be something else college, right? Northern Vermont College in Johnson. He's here, and Deb is here with him. This is Deb's kind of farewell meeting. Deb is leaving us officially from a full-time perspective at the end of the week. She'll probably be back in the area, and we'll probably have her on the payroll list in case she needs to come in and help with a few last-minute items, or if she just really can't stay in Canada and wants to get back here once in a while. But anyway, Deb has been the Recreation Director since 2016. right after we moved into this building, and has really moved the department a long way forward from what we were. Has integrated an online reservation system that is it's a packaged program that we bought through a third-party vendor. We have lots of support on it from the vendor if necessary. We are able to take reservations. We still don't take credit cards for recreation registrations now, but people are able to register, reserve a pavilion, or sign up for a league, and then it gets back to us, and we produce a bill, and it goes out, and it gets paid. I didn't bring the budget with me, but we're considerably ahead of last year's pace. Again, for revenue, we've taken in more pool registration money this year already than we took in all of last year. And that doesn't even count lessons and other ancillary things. So, you know, she has really done a wonderful job of bringing this department to a place where I think she can confidently turn it over to someone else to shepherd it forward. I think Nick is the guy to do that. He's got a lot of energy. He's got a good personality, at least so far. He smiles at me most days. And, you know, he's got a background, I think, that allows him to be someone who can deal effectively and politely with the public, even when the public might not be happy. And nobody's going to promise that everybody's going to go away happy, but he can engage in difficult conversations and stay polite and stay at a high professional level and still deliver the message that has to be delivered. So I'm looking forward to working with Nick. You certainly can ask him a few questions. Deb probably has a few last words that she'd like to say. So.
Up to the table.
It's wired, Nick, but only for sound.
Right here. It's wired for sound. Do you have any questions for Nick?
Not up.
He's already had a hot topic issue, by the way, that he handled very well.
Well, actually, that brings to mind, I was just scrolling Front Porch Forum, and there was somebody that was looking to put together a work party to help with the
playground.
Yeah. So if you haven't seen it, it's out there.
I just responded.
We've
Oh,
responded,
good.
we're on it.
Good.
That one, but yeah, no, Nick did a really good job. He was still working at his other job that he worked during school to get here for a couple of training days. Because there's stuff in my job that only happens once a year. So he made time to get here for a couple of training days, which was great to meet the staff before it even started. And then was here first day of programming, which is it's really a hard day to describe to anybody. You have to live it. And so he got to live that day with us, which was really great and very helpful. And then has been here full time since July 1st. And it was last Thursday, about 5 o'clock, I realized my phone hadn't had any texts or phone calls on it yet. So that was a great feeling. They had all gone. Nick and I had touched base, but they had all, the staff is definitely feeling comfortable to get a hold of Nick and ask him the questions that come up. And so that makes me feel really good. So I'm happy about that. So, but yeah, and the staff, I don't know if there's anything else you want to know about him or any questions you'd like to ask for Nick.
What was your master's degree in?
Education.
And you have some work experience in recreation prior
Yes.
to that, I assume?
I spent the last 7 years in the athletics and recreation department at Johnson State, doing a bunch of different things.
Have you worked with younger kids before?
Oh, yes. I also, past 4 years combined, I've worked at Laraway Youth and Family,
Oh, sorry.
which is social services for kids with behavioral issues. And then I transferred to Howard Center in Burlington and worked with kids there until I transferred to adults with mental health issues. That's what
Great.
I just got done working this past month. I'm still subbing there on the weekends. But.
What was the difficult situation you ran into recently?
Oh, it's our yearly lice issue. And we have it once a year, and so luckily I was still here to guide that conversation. But it was handled very, very well, and yeah, unfortunately it's one of those situations that it happens to every program in the area, and we have to deal with it every year. And there's usually one parent, and it's usually the parent with the situation that is not necessarily happy.
Strong opinions.
Yeah. So, but it was well handled. So yeah. So that's taken care of. It's our yearly fun thing.
So the parents just need to deal with that, and then they can, kids can come back?
Yeah, so we have in our handbook, most camps, actually the majority of camps in Vermont are knit-free facilities. And the CDC actually for the schools allow, once you've washed the hair, to come back with knits. The reason camps don't do that is because in schools you're sitting in your desk and you're not climbing all over each other, and you're not going to the pool with a towel and throwing your towel on top of someone else's head, and that's why camps are knit free. And at the beginning of the year we give out our handbook, policy handbook, that has our lice thing really written clearly in it with our behavioral things and everything, and every parent has to sign that they've read it. But every year when we have, and this year we actually have a few cases, but there's always, out of one, generally speaking, one parent out of the handful of kids that are sent home is upset by the policy and reiterates the CDC policy to us and things like that. And so we just have to really politely re-explain that we're well aware of the CDC policy, and we understand in the school that that's the policy, but this is why this isn't the policy here. And explain too, like we get into the situation at camp that it can go through the camp, including the counselors, really quickly. So it takes us from a situation of being a burden, and we recognize it's a burden on families to have their kids home for a couple of days till they're lice-free, to the entire camp shutting down until we de-lice the entire camp. So every year it's unfortunately have that situation occur, that there is someone that's upset by that. I have to say, in my experience, though, the rest of the camp and even most of the kids that are sent home with a problem are actually happy by the policy because they recognize it stops it. And we, generally speaking, within a week have it under control because of the policy, and we're really tight on it, and we have it under control and it's taken care of. So, yeah.
Do you do an examination of the kids as they come in?
Yeah.
I know at a lot of overnight camps, that's standard protocol. You bring your kids in, they get the lights and everything.
Yeah, and we have every year in training, we do the lice training to understand what it looks like. And then we have our, if a new staff even is a little questioning if it's lice, we bring in the staff that have definitely seen lice before so that they're very aware of what they're looking at and stuff like that. So, and we do it with dignity, and we don't blow horn who's going home, and it's very subtly done.
I'm a big red stamp.
It's the big L, and so yeah, which is the same with our behavioral, our discipline policies. We do that as discreetly and politely with our families. So, yeah.
So Nick, since Deb came aboard, there's been a fairly decent uptick in additional revenues that have come into the rec program that were sorely needed for a long time. She's done a spectacular job and has managed to keep the public's interests and gain more of the public interest in participating. And I was just curious to know if you've thought about your direction heading moving forward, and how you can keep that trend going. And because I'm a big stickler for not having the municipality be the tax burden for, or the dumping zone for everybody's great ideas that don't have much financing behind them. So I'm just wondering, have you thought any at all about what direction you might head towards there moving forward?
Yeah, definitely. Well, two things. One, Deb she's done all the groundwork. She's laid a really good foundation, and I align with a lot of her ideas. So I just like to take I have like a marketing background too, so I'd love to market our current programs and maybe bolster them, try to get more people using the pool, even though this year's broken records, membership and sales. And two, coming from Johnson, super low budget, you have to get creative when you are going to introduce new programs or activities or events. And so making sure that there's a need and interest and a want before even introducing anything. But the direction I want to take is the same that Deb's been doing for the past 2 years. I'd like to keep running with that and adding little pieces as we go.
Something we've been talking about a lot. I'm excited about Nick's marketing background because that's definitely where I was going to where I would have faltered a little bit. He's definitely a little more IT, like some of our training. I'm like, stop jumping around on the computer. But so that's exciting. One thing we're running into is the ability to grow much further, and we're having to get creative with that. Where the pool can continue to grow is we have this huge outdoor facility, and then we partnered with First and Fitness for the winter, and so we're able, with the stuff we're doing and adding special programs and things like that, that's an indefinite growth. The day camp is as big as it can be. We can't make that camp any bigger until we get creative with spacing and things like that. So that's a challenge for Nick too, and we've talked about and he has some really great ideas how to work around that challenge until if we ever get to the point that we have a building and things like that. Something that I've looked into before and he's looked into even more is, possibly bringing a bus on, and because Crossett Brook School isn't used a lot, but we don't want to use the Crossett Brook School without the ability to get back into town for the pool and things like that. But if we had our own bus for transportation, and that's a lot cheaper than purchasing a building, obviously. So that kind of thing, and just doing that type of research. And Nick is really keen on that. It has some really great, really neat ideas that I haven't even, he took even further, which is awesome. So, yeah. So I'm confident.
I'm quizzing on those.
Yeah. The one thing I do, and I keep stressing to Nick to remember for this fall programming, now there's a couple of programs that are inherently just going to go because I've started them and they're really stable and going. But I'm encouraging Nick not to program for the fall. He needs that time he needs this summer to spend this time with our biggest programs, because for instance, last week alone, and he was, doing most of it, we ran day camp, which we're averaging over 60 kids a day. We ran all our swim lessons, which are 20 swim lessons a day. We averaged 2 groups. There's actually 2 groups every day at our pool now that come to the pool. So we're averaging over 200 people that attend the pool Monday through Friday, and our attendance on the weekend is up. We ran a Harry Potter science camp that had 15 other kids involved in it. We had a tennis camp going that had 2 kids in it, and I feel like there was something else.
There probably was.
I feel like there was something else.
The junior lifeguard course.
Junior lifeguard camp that had 10 other kids in it. I knew there was something else.
Yeah, busy week.
It was a busy week. So he has to really be focused and make sure those programs are running and being effective. And to effectively program for the fall, that really needs to start at the beginning of the summer. So I've really discouraged him from programming for the fall, except for the 2 that are going, and getting a handle on the summer program and what we have, and then start programming for winter and spring, and then continue on.
Well, it's certainly a wiser choice to do lesser things great and not more than you can handle poorly.
Yeah, definitely.
I agree.
Yeah, so.
Well, it sounds like you've made a good choice.
I feel so,
Thanks.
yeah.
So are you living here in town?
I actually live in Jeff right now.
Oh, yeah.
But I'm really liking the area, so we'll see.
See what time will bring, huh?
Wish you the best of luck.
Thank you.
Got some big shoes to follow.
Yeah.
So we made a joke. Every time someone says, I'd have $300 by now.
It's almost to the point that I sent out an email, like, don't say that.
When she introduces me to someone, they're like, oh, hi. But oh my gosh, yeah. She's done great work. You can tell the community loves her.
Yeah.
And I really appreciated being able to learn from her this past, I guess, month now.
Yeah.
In both part-time and full-time capacities, and definitely gonna miss you, and definitely looking forward to when you're coming back in September. So I can
So
get that list of
September,
questions.
in September, I'm here for 6 weeks for my radiation portion. So I actually finish chemo next Tuesday. I have one tomorrow. Next Tuesday, I finish up my chemo, and then I have a month off. And I'm kind of utilizing that to go away and take a month off as much as I can. And but then I'll be back for radiation. And Nick and I have actually gone through his list of questions and things like. We do not need to talk about budget right now. It doesn't happen to the fall. So in September, when we come back, we can sit down and look at the budget and go through that. So, it won't in any way be full time, but there'll be a couple hours of things and just what to do for wrapping up the program and things like that. So I'll be here, so I might as well come in. There's no point in not. So, which is great.
Just one quick thing that is a general recreation issue, and I don't know if it has come to the attention of any board members, but I would ask all of you if you ever do hear things, people complaining about being charged fees, for instance, that you would remember what Chris said, that we're trying to make sure. We had an issue with a group of people playing pickleball.
We still have that issue.
And, for some reason, they just feel that they don't have to pay. They're not doing anything that requires payment. And we have been dealing with them for a couple of months now. I didn't realize it was still an issue.
It is still an issue. That was one thing.
They're showing up every Tuesday or whatever day it is.
So they're looking to have the courts on for a specific time, similar to the Frisbee group, looking to kind of have their own field on a specific time frame?
Yeah, they actually have a Google Docs sign-up sheet. It's a group out of Montpelier, Waterbury, and Burlington, and they play the intermediate people play in Waterbury and the beginners play in Montpelier, and it's every Tuesday and Thursday it's every Monday and Wednesday from 9 to 11, and they actually have a sign-up sheet and the whole 9 yards. So I sent, and I very
They say that this is a drop-in.
Yeah, it's a drop-in.
And, if they can play, they play.
On the Google Docs.
that they're not an organized group, and so I sent our form that says if it's a group more than 11. The one time I was down there, I counted 35. Now it has eased off a little bit because they're really upset by the fee. What I chose to do when I set the fee for them, because our fee scale by the select board is actually $10 an hour per court to rent a tennis court, which is a pretty typical rental, because if you're doing a lesson, it's an hour lesson or whatever. But if they go from May until October and it's 2 hours, 2 days a week, that would be a really large sum of money. And I felt that was a little unreasonable. So what I did instead is I charged them what the adult leagues at Dak Row use, because that's really the same time period and same amount of time. So it was $700, and they feel that that's unreasonable, even though it'd be from May until October.
And it's like
There's 35 of
$13
them, $10 each for 2 days.
Yeah.
There's actually 50 of them that are members of the group. One of them actually admitted that to me one day. So it has been an ongoing issue. They had planned to come and talk to you guys from the select board, and this is one thing I wanted to bring to you guys, because we're now at this impasse of what I do. I've been very clear. I've highlighted all the rules. You're considered a group that, if you're advertising, which they're advertising, they're more than 11. I don't have it in front of me. But they are absolutely refusing to pay. They refuse to come to the select board because they don't feel they need to come to the select board. So I don't think as a town we've ever run into this situation before. We've had groups that were angry. We had the disc golf that wasn't thrilled about it, and a drop-in soccer league that wasn't thrilled about it, both of whom have actually come to us this year and have booked a field and are thrilled they have their field, their time, and they can shoo anybody off it. So it's all worked out. This is the first group that is blatantly just no.
So maybe we put a padlock on.
I was just going to say, is there some way of shutting the court down to them
at those times. There is. We can padlock it, yes.
Yeah,
And the other thing.
That's probably the smart thing to do, because, let's face it, there's a lot of people out there in this town who don't use any of these recreation services at all.
Correct.
And they still pay a tax, which
Yes.
is probably more equivalent or more than what you're asking these people to pay.
Absolutely, and I know for a fact that it's not all Waterbury residents as well. That's the other portion. Like it is an organized group, and the theory is you don't want to discourage activity, which is correct. But I do know that tennis players have reorganized themselves because everybody knows it's down there, and they even at one point this summer, and I told the day camp never again, actually kicked the day camp kids off the court because they were going to play. And it's like, no, if it was reserved, then yes, they could do this, but it's not reserved. You have every right to be.
Well, that highlights exactly why a group like that should be paying and reserving. They can't be kicking daycare kids, people who pay for their kids to go to a program.
Correct.
They still
That's
not
outrageous.
too?
I haven't touched base with Arnie. I know the rec director in Montpelier, his name is Arnie, and is having the same issue. And I haven't touched base if they've paid. We discussed it because they were running into the exact same problem, and he has tennis camps that he runs off of there.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So who would handle that? Bill Woodruff, or who would handle that time frame padlocking? I mean, it's not like we're losing anything by padlocking it because they're not paying anyway.
We'll figure that out.
And
We don't have to.
And if they finally go away, we haven't lost anything, and that would free up that court for possibly somebody who did want to pay the fee or whatever.
I just brought it up in case it came to any of your attention.
I'm glad you did.
Because
No, actually, I was going to bring it up.
some of the people have, threatened to talk to select board members. And
Bring them on.
Yes.
Yeah, go right ahead.
Talk to them.
Yeah. So that was one of the things I was going to talk about when saying goodbye. I did want to actually thank you guys because when I came on, as most of you know, it was kind of a strange time in the recreation department, I would put it politely. And the support that I've received from both all the town employees and the select board and the community in general has been phenomenal. I've come with some asking for some money. Almost every year I've come asking for some money and I've received it. And I try to always come and ask for money that I know absolutely has to be received. And Hope Davey is a perfect example because it is literally falling down right before the build occurs. So I appreciate that support. It makes our job so much easier. I hope you continue it to Nick, something that we were able to direct the rec committee in because their role has changed as well with having a full-time rec director. They're really embracing the role of looking long-term. And so we actually finally went on a tour of all of our recreation facilities and truly putting critical eyes on our recreation facilities and what we need to do, because something that was happening is people would come with these great new ideas and I kept saying, stop. We have to take care of what we have before we do anything new. We have all these amazing assets that have been patchwork taken care of, and we have a lot of stuff we have to take care of before we even attempt to move forward with new, whatever it is recreation-wise. So I hope you continue that support for Nick, because I do know he's going to be coming, and I'm going to just give you an FYI. The lights at Dak Row are 40 years old, and we can't get replacement pieces for them anymore, and it is not a cheap repair. So FYI on that one. But like I said, the support by all the town employees, especially that first, as I'm training Nick, I'm kind of reliving my first couple of months and getting the programs going, and literally without every single person support, it wouldn't have happened. So I appreciate everything the town's given me too, so thank you.
Well, we certainly appreciate everything you've done too, Deb.
If I can listen to a word or two.
You have to turn it on.
If all else fails, find out.
It's right on the top.
Right here, Herschel.
Kind of on the outside.
Right there.
Okay. It's great to come here and hear that there's a program transition made into I come from a time when we had, at best, organized confusion and assets we didn't even know about, and programs we could only kind of think of, and the fees for everything hadn't been looked at for 20 years, and so on and so on. We didn't even have rules of the game that we fumbled our way through, and it's just, I just want to bring attention to that yeah, you're going to have problems, but thank goodness there's a railroad that you can take the trees off of it and move on down the line because there's a railroad now. Thanks.
Oh, thank you, Herschel.
I would second that, thank you. We've come so far in 2 years. 2 years, 2.5 years? It's
yeah.
amazing. So,
Yeah.
you did a great job.
Thank you. Shorter than I had wanted, but in the end, things work out for a reason. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, I also want to say that I've been really impressed with how organized and the just your level of detail and your confidence in the decisions as you present them. And very rarely did I ever feel like you needed us to really talk through direction as much as just, you know, updating us on what's happening and helping us, you know, grow as a community and recreation and something that's sustainable and has a path. So I mean, I can't thank you enough for everything you've done, and hopefully we can continue as a town on that path. So
I think so. I think it's so.
Set me up.
Yeah. I have confidence.
Anybody else? Well, Deb, to think that I've actually come on board a little bit on this whole recreation thing, it shows that you've made some leaps and bounds here. So we hope Nick will keep it up.
Yeah.
And I hope you enjoy your time off.
Thank you. Yes, actually, I knew Nick was doing a good job when the other night I actually slept 12 hours. And I had not done that in a long time. And I was like, I actually texted Nick and said, I just slept 12 hours, thank you. So.
Okay, well, congratulations.
Good luck. Congratulations.
welcome, Nick.
Thank you.
I want to hear about this one.
Yeah, while Deb and Nick are here, can we jump to the liquor license thing that we added?
Sure. Yeah, you want to do that right now then?
Yeah, that way they can hear it and then leave. So this was an email that Carla received at 1:25 this afternoon. Don't know much more about it than what it says here. Hello, my name is Leo Foy. I run the Dog River Brewery in Berlin, and we sponsor a team in the Waterbury Men's Softball League. They're holding a 2-day tournament at Rowe Field on August 4th and 5th. I assume that's on the schedule.
That's during the season, yeah.
The league has asked Dog River Brewery if we could arrange to have a beer serving tent on Saturday at the field during the tournament. Before I submit the special event permit, I'm wondering if the town would consider approving such an event. We are properly licensed with the DLC to do this, and we have done so many times. I have the event permit filled out, but want to check with you before writing checks and bringing the actual application to you. So he's basically asking for advance approval. I'm not sure, you didn't know anything about this.
No, I know about the tournament. The tournament happens every year, so we have the men's league, co-ed, it's the men's league. He's
Gotta go back to the microphone, or Ann's gonna come down on you.
And I told Nick I would take this one. So those tournaments, so the men's league, here's the crux of it. The men's league have one weekend that they do their end tournament. The co-ed does, and then the ladies do. So there's 3 in a row. So the potential can you're opening is that you'll have 3 weekends of the beer tent, which I don't know if it's good or bad, but I could see if one group gets it going, especially being the first weekend, that the other group's thinking this is a fun thing to have. The flip side of that is having a licensed vendor down there with the responsibility, and the breweries in Vermont are very good about following the rules and the regulations and everything like that. We potentially are curtailing tailgating that goes on, that we know goes on down there and don't prevent. So with just getting it on the fly, it's kind of I can see the pros and cons to it.
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head, and it's not even I was going to say an open secret, but it's not a secret. We have had a policy forever that people aren't supposed to drink at the ball fields, but for more than the 30 years that I've been here, it's been going on. And even when we had a local police department, it was not vigorously enforced unless people were out of control. So I tend to lean toward it's more organized, and it's licensed, it's official, and
Well, I think if everybody was with the understanding that if they cross over the line,
Correct.
they're going to ruin it for themselves.
Yeah.
So if that's conveyed to them and they know it, which it sounds like in the 30 years they've done pretty well.
They have. I mean, because it, like Bill said, it's definitely. I mean, everybody knows, but they definitely police themselves, and I even know for a fact that they have asked members that don't follow the direction to leave, like not to be part of it. So it is self-policed for sure.
So having said that, is there any information in your brochures that you, or whatever paperwork that you give to these guys, these leagues, pertaining to any of that?
They know there's no drinking.
No, but I'm saying pertaining to the fact that, I guess the way I look at it is I don't mind the group of people coming down here and having a great time as long as they stay under control and don't get ridiculous, But I'm saying that, is there any literature that pertains to the fact that we know that there's some drinking going on, or you probably don't want to,
we don't want to go there.
Don't go there.
Yeah.
We have a rule, but we know you're ignoring it. We're not sending that message.
Yeah.
No, I guess what I was thinking was just to forewarn them that, that we know what's going on, but as long as you keep it contained and...
I mean, they are polite enough if I go down there that alcohol is not visible.
Yeah. Most of those leagues are pretty much like that. It's very discreet. It's not an open and wanton thing that's going on. So right now it is pretty discreet. And I guess the piece about this would be that it would be an openly sanctioned aspect of it. These folks have a DLC license for serving like that, so it has a level of order and
and we would require that they have insurance and all of
And
that.
when these 3 tournaments happen, youth soccer hasn't started either, and youth baseball is over, so you don't have...
So it's all adults.
It's all adults that are down there, so it's a little more controlled aspect.
Well, it's kind of funny. I'm sitting here looking out the window watching these guys play, and it's just a cloud of dust whenever they run from one base to the
it's
other.
really
I'm
bad
thinking to
right
myself,
now.
they need something to wash the dust.
It is pretty bad right now. Rain tomorrow.
Well, in most of the leagues that I've played in, if somebody's popping in between innings and everything else, the level of their play goes down enough, the rest of the team doesn't much care for that. So they do keep a pretty good check on that.
I mean, you're talking to the Canadians, so...
Don't want anybody running to third base first.
I'm well aware of your leagues.
I guess I have two comments. One, specific to the permit, I think the one challenge that I think breweries might have a little bit easier of a time of, I'm not sure what when they apply for these permits, how much they have to define a perimeter.
I believe there is a perimeter that has to be defined.
Yeah, so that's the thing that like it creates it doesn't make it very organic, because the way that Vermont law is for liquor and dram shop, you have to almost create your local, you have to create your establishment basically, and there's an in and there's an out, and anything that happens within that you're responsible for. So it's probably going to be a challenge to make it feel organic and comfortable down there, because you basically have to make a pen and get everyone in the pen. So it'll be interesting there. I think, separately, I'd almost want to have a conversation about the alcohol policy and if we are being loose on it, I think maybe it's time to have the conversation. And I don't know what the appropriate thing is, but for example, I was on the kickball league in Burlington and Oakledge Park. I don't know if the rule is that it's no alcohol, but there's definitely people drinking like crazy for it. And I don't know if the rule is you can't be intoxicated in public. I totally agree with that. But, you know, if we need, what is that rule really doing if we already kind of know we're being loose about it anyways? And I feel like that puts us at more risk versus potentially eliminating that rule. And if it's here or a specific park, I don't know. You know, I don't know, because if we ignore it here but hold people accountable separately in other ways, I think that's a dangerous line to take too.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
I don't know.
It is definitely one that a conversation needs to be, because I think as the community grows, you know, when all the leagues started, everybody knew everybody, and you know, so-and-so's brother-in-law was, and sister-in-law, you know, you're all interconnected, and we went to school together, where now you're getting further and further afield, where there's people that are new to the community that don't have those connections, and where do you draw the line? And I think it is a conversation that definitely needs to be had, and how do we enforce it? And
I think it's a good recommendation to come from the probably the rec committee and Nick, do a little bit of research on that and just provide some recommendations for us.
because we do have often people, especially at the Hope Davy, you know, they're having their pre-wedding celebration at the Hope Davy Pavilion, and you know, are we allowed to have like a beer or a glass of wine? And you know, they're not trying to have, they're not selling, they're not trying to have a big blow-up party. So yeah, it is definitely, that's a...
Yeah, there again, that's why I said emphasizing the fact that we know what's going on, but if you guys step over the line, you're going to ruin it for yourselves, because we'll completely eliminate it.
Yeah, but we have to watch the research on the law has to really be done, like on
Right.
the open container law
Yeah.
and all of that kind of stuff, and where we're held accountable. There's so many pieces to it, as you would know, Mark.
Yeah, it's like specifically if you're a restaurant, you want to do BYOB, there isn't really a permit for it.
Right.
So it's like that kind of scenario where it becomes very gray when it comes to liability following that.
Right. So that's a good
Okay.
first project.
All right, yeah.
All set. Thanks.
Deb.
Thanks.
Thank you.
So we'll move on to 2017, the audit results of the RFP.
Yeah, I mentioned to the board several months ago now that Bill Iacoboni, who has been auditing the town and village books for longer than I've been here, gave up his public accounting practice. Waterbury was the last town, village, or school district that he was doing. And in order to do them, you have to submit your audit for peer review, and in order to do that and to comply with all the GASB rules, you have to take a certain number of continuing education credits. He has to do that for his license anyway, and you know, he does mostly businesses, and you know, he does a lot of personal income taxes, but he serves a lot of businesses. And he told me, he said, I only have so much time really for continuing ed. I've got to do a certain amount of credits every year, and I can't really justify spending any of them on public accounting stuff now. So he bowed out. Unfortunately for us, he bowed out after the budget was already put together, assuming that he was going to do it. And in his defense, I had asked him, he told me that he was pretty sure he was going to be done, but he agreed to that 2018 would be his last year if he could swing it. And we budgeted for that. Then he looked at the rules and he just said, you know, probably nobody would ever find out, but if somebody did, I don't want to risk my license, and I don't want to get you folks in hot water. So after we had already put the budget together, he said that he wasn't going to be able to do the work for us. So I worked with the Vermont League of Cities and Towns. They put together, they have a model RFP to help communities search for these types of services. And I had talked to Jacoboni, and I ended up sending an RFP out to 3 firms, 2 local firms, Sullivan & Powers and Fothergill, Sgally & Valley. They're both Montpelier firms. And then I sent a proposal to Johnson & Lambert, who I have some familiarity with. They audit the VLCT books. So I sent those out several weeks ago now, and Johnson Lambert got back to me pretty quickly and said they weren't looking for any new municipal clients, so they decided not to put a proposal in. I got a proposal from Sullivan & Powers, and then the proposals were due last Wednesday on the 11th, and on the 12th, a letter came from Fothergill, Sgally & Valley, and they appreciated the request, but they're booked up for the rest of this year. A lot of their clients have years that ended June 30th, and they don't have time. They're unable to bid at this time. If you decide to request proposals in the future, please consider us again. So we have one proposal from Sullivan Powers. Sullivan Powers was the firm that used to do the audits for the town and village before Jacoboni took over. Jacoboni actually was an employee of Sullivan Powers and did them, and then he hung his own shingle out 35 years ago, whatever it was, and then he started doing them on his own. So the proposal, we've got, I don't know, I can't remember what it is, I didn't look, $8,500, $9,000 in the budget for an audit. I knew they were going to be higher. The proposal from Sullivan & Powers is $22,000. I know that is 3 times what we budgeted, but given our accounts and our funding and the assets that we have and the number of employees we have, I don't think it's out of, it's only one proposal, but I don't think it's in the stratosphere. I know what VLCT is paying. They have a different situation. Part of their audit is for insurance companies, so that's very different than what we do. But this is not out of line. If you look at budgets from other municipalities and what they're paying for their audit, you'll realize how good of a deal that we had from Jacoboni for a long time. And it's too bad that he's not there to do it. My recommendation is that we accept it. I did ask for a proposal for this year and then also prices through 2021, so 5 years. $22,000 for this year and next year. So this year, the 2017 year, which we haven't had audited yet, the 2018 year, then for the 2019 year, $22,700, then it goes to $23,300, and then ultimately $24,000. What I'd like your permission to do, the proposal asked the firms that wanted to bid to submit a technical proposal and also a price. And I wanted to review the technical proposal and have some help from the CFO at the LCT to review what they're proposing to do technically to make sure it meets all of our requirements. I'm not an auditor or CPA, and while I'm familiar with it more than the average person, I do want to review the technical proposal. I would like to talk to Sullivan & Powers and accept their $22,000 proposal for this year, but tell them, we were late, we didn't learn from Jacoboni until late, we got one proposal, and if they'd be willing to allow us to just buy this, this service, and then tell them that we're going to go out to bid again. I don't know how they'll feel about that, but we're the customer, and I think they'll understand. Fred Duplessis is one of the principals. I've known Fred for a long time through VLCT. He's a very reasonable person. So I would like the board to authorize me to enter into this agreement to do the 2017 audit for $22,000 if I believe the technical proposal is adequate and subject to negotiation about the future audits and maybe telling them that we'll go out to bid again. There is no requirement in Vermont law that municipalities get audited. It is a best practice, absolutely. I would not recommend not doing it. The only time an audit is required is if you receive and spend more than $750,000 or more in federal funds in any given year, and then the Federal Single Audit Act kicks in. We do not need a single audit for the 2017 year. It was one of those off years right in between. We needed one because of the roundabout. We needed one earlier because of the flood and the $1 million grant we got for this building. In 2017, we didn't spend much federal money. I think even going forward, the way that the Main Street project is structured is that VTrans is paying the bill, and then they're sending us a bill for the reimbursement of $200,000. So I don't even think after that, unless we have other grants that come down the way. But I also would feel uncomfortable not doing an audit for 2017. There's been an audit done every single year. They do provide a good insight into best practices. The audits are not intended, they're not forensic audits, they're not intended to find fraud. I mean, if they come across something, obviously they're going to report it, but they're more interested in internal controls and making sure that you are following, even though we don't need a single audit because we didn't have $750,000 of grant money. We do have grant money that's federal money, and there are certain reporting requirements that you're supposed to comply with. So it's a good idea to have the audit done. So I would ask that you authorize me to engage them for the 2017 audit, subject to the technical standards being adequate, and then moving forward in the future with another RFP.
Okay.
And the technical standards that you're talking about is basically just a detail of services rendered?
They're basically their scope of work, what they plan to do for their services, correct, though?
Yeah, how they're going to do it, what means they're going to do. Yakavoni was a one-horse shop. Here's a breakdown from them. 36 hours for the principal at $220 an hour, 40 hours for the person in charge of the audit at $130 an hour, 80 hours of staff time at $100 an hour, and then out-of-pocket expenses. So, they have a number of people. They have an audit manager that has to report to a principal. They have staff people that do the grunt work. So it's more in line with how most other municipalities are audited. Bill Yakavoni was kind of the last of the dying breed. I mean, that's how it was when I was in Island Pond. I had one guy that came in, and he was there for a couple of weeks and did everything. But as time goes on, everything gets more complicated.
Okay. Well, if somebody'd like to make the motion then to allow Bill to enter the municipality into a contractual agreement with Sullivan & Powers for 2017 audit for the sum of $22,000, with the understanding that Bill had the chance to detail the technical aspects of the contract with VLCT.
Right. Well, I'll probably use, you don't have to, VLCT won't be part of the motion, but I'll review the technical standards.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, great.
I'll second.
All right. The motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion?
Okay, thank you very much.
Actually, I would like to ask a couple of questions.
Yeah.
Had you had any consideration to ask Bill Yakavoni how that price, how he would consider that price?
I haven't.
Okay, and second, seeing as how there is such a wide spread between what I'm assuming Bill was charging us, because we had budgeted $8,000 or $9,000, right?
Yeah.
he wouldn't reconsider for something closer to?
I don't think so.
Okay. Okay.
I
Because,
can
it
ask
certainly
him.
would.
I can ask him,
He
but,
made it clear that it
Yeah.
was something that wasn't.
yeah, and
you know, worked out with his
it's probably
situation.
too late at this point anyway,
Yeah.
because, you know, the continuing ed stuff, you know, we're
Seemed
halfway
like he
through
wasn't
the year.
comfortable.
Yeah, I mean, I really think that, I mean, I didn't know it, but he told Leanne a year ago that he thought that was his last one, but he was reluctant to tell me, and I said, well, what was I gonna do, you know, bite your head off or not pay you, you know? Anyway, I think that ship has sailed, Chris, but I'll talk to him about this, but I'll also, you know, touch base with some surrounding communities, and I'm pretty sure this is well within the normal.
Yeah.
The normal. We just were fortunate for a long time.
Right. No, we've lost a few bargains here over the last couple of years, but I didn't know if the consideration was for him to get done doing it was because of the cost involved with the additional education and whether or not,
Yeah.
you know, paying him a similar price would bring him back around, but it doesn't sound so. So, all right, a motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Thanks.
Okay, final update, 2018 tax rate.
Yeah, when we set the tax rate a couple of weeks ago, I told you that I asked you to set the rate, you know, no greater than the levels that we set it at. And I had sent an email to Michelle Baker, the business manager at the school, and to the superintendent. And, you know, the superintendent got back to me and sent me some information that Michelle had provided them. And this was updated on June 28th, just a few days before we set the tax rate. And, you know, our common level of appraisal at 98.67 cents, 98.67% is here. And then the equalized tax rate, the actual homestead tax rate, that's adjusted for spending and adjusted for the common level of appraisal, and then the non-residential tax rate as set by the state, and then divided by the common level of appraisal to make that adjustment. So the tax rate that we set was the correct one. I just want to read this email from Michelle, just so you have an idea. Because I did ask in the email, I said, when we consolidated a couple of years ago, there was talk that we would get a credit for that there'd be a discount. And I wanted to make sure that was still in
We went up 7 cents.
the game plan. We did. So Michelle emailed me and said, sorry, I missed your email while I was away. The tax rates attached, which we set, agreed to my estimates. Education spending, which is voter-approved expenses less estimated revenues for Harwood, increased for the 2019 fiscal year. It went from education spending for the whole district now, $30,697,880 a year ago, and it went up to $31,649,249. So that was about a 4.5% increase. If education spending was the same as it was last year, the homestead tax rate would have been unchanged for us. Given increases in health insurance, et cetera, I'm not sure.
It's red there now.
I'm not sure how many districts were able to keep a level funded tax rate. At $1.62, which is what we set the tax rate at, the 2018 homestead rate is still below what it was in 2015 and 16. So we forget that. It was 7 cents lower last year, but our tax rate this year at $1.62 compares with $1.55 last year, so it's up 7 cents. But in FY 2017, it was $1.65. In FY 15, it was $1.66. So we're still lower than we were even 3 years ago. She did say that, well, I guess it was in the other email that I got, but so the discount for the consolidation is baked into these numbers. So it's a 7-cent increase. We have to live with it. Because of the consolidation, it still is lower than it was before we consolidated. So that's just an update.
Well, I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop on this whole consolidation deal and see what happens moving forward, because it's almost like, I won't say if this is their last exhausted attempt to lower school education costs moving forward. You know, they were talking on the radio there the other day about arming teachers, arming staff, you know, whether or not to start putting guards in the schools and all the other issues pertaining to the problems that we're having in our education system these days. I'd be curious to know what we're going to be faced with in the future. So
yeah, it's hard to tell. I know there is a movement. In fact, it kind of happened this year. You know, a year ago at the last minute, the governor threatened and basically said, you know, he wanted school boards to go back and renegotiate health insurance with the teachers. And, you know, there was a big uproar about that because, you know, they were all negotiating as individual districts, and now the governor wanted to impose something. And I remember saying at the time, I'm not opposed or in favor of having the teachers have to have the same health insurance across the state. But if you're going to do that and you have a collective bargaining situation, you need to bargain with them. And so now there's a movement this year, even a stronger movement, to try to consolidate the insurance for teachers statewide into one contract, uniform across the state. It's hard to do that for pay because, you know, the different regions of the state have different costs of living and costs of housing and the like, but insurance is fairly, you know, your medical services are not dramatically different. So anyway, what they do, that's beyond our control. I just wanted to let you know that I did follow up on what I told you I would do, and we did set the right number, and it's 7 cents higher than last year. So.
I mean, would there ever be the suggestion that maybe it's time to consider, if things continue to worsen, not only through accelerating costs, but the problematic issues there that are happening in our school systems, to deem them obsolete and start to look for alternative ways of educating our kids?
Well, that's a philosophical issue that you can discuss with whomever you want, but not here.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Last item, or next, last item. Discuss parking at the Newton Baker Mini Park and another parking issue to go along with it.
Yeah, so
You want this one?
no, this is working right now for the moment. So the Newton Baker Mini Park under the interstate on Stowe Street, the little park there. The land that the Newton Baker Mini Park sits in is really V-Trans land. It's part of the interstate right-of-way system. The bridge abutment sits on it, and that whole area up to the lot line for that house to the north, and then, you know, fairly wide right-of-way. That's all state land, really. But Newton Baker years ago thought it would be nice to beautify that area, and he did some plantings in there, and over time it has developed into a small park. And before Newton passed away, the village actually named it for him, the Newton Baker Mini Park, and erected a stone there. It's not a headstone. It was an honorary monument at the time. And, you know, it's known as the Newton Baker Mini Park. We have a couple of picnic tables there. And, you know, it's a nice wayside spot. There was an informal pullout there that was always used as a parking area for the park. And then when the state redid the interstate bridges over the past couple of years, when they rebuilt the area down below, they formalized it as a parking area. There's curbs that delineate the whole parking area, and it's line
There's
striped.
actually no curbs.
It's line striped for parking.
It's just line striped, but there are no curbs.
Well, maybe there's not any curbs in
Where the parking spaces
in the semicircle, but there's curbs that
along the edge.
go up to it. Anyway, before the interstate project began, the village trustees grappled with the fact that the parking spaces were being co-opted by, we think, employees of the Hen of the Wood restaurant. They have a parking lot, it's a busy restaurant, and they want the parking for customers, so I think the people that run the restaurant told the employees, don't park in the parking lot. They started parking there. We tried, we worked with the folks at the Hen of the Wood. We suggested, you know, use the park and ride. Maybe somebody can, you know, an employee can shuttle people back and forth, whatever. Then the interstate project happened, and you couldn't park there for 3 years. And they survived as a business without using that parking area.
Yeah, they all parked on my street.
Yeah, they parked at the street.
And now it's being parked in again. The village no longer exists. I don't believe the village ever actually adopted an ordinance for that parking area, and I'm pretty sure the ordinance that you folks just adopted does not regulate parking in that little lot. I don't even really know if we own the lot, you know, where the town highway right-of-way for Stowe Street and the right-of-way for V-Trans probably overlaps there. But before I spend a lot of time on it, I just wanted to ask if anybody cares. You know,
I think
you can't park there.
People might be parking there as almost like a little informal parking ride too. I've been down there on the weekend, and because I'm involved with Steve in trying to improve some of the planting. There's a tree that needs to be removed. They want to change the sign for the Newton Baker, and so it won't be the mini park, it'll just be Newton Baker Park. The garden club is involved in trying to do planting around the sign.
Right, there's a new memorial bench going to be going in
yeah,
there.
the garden club just donated a little tree. So anyway, I've spent more time than I would like to admit down there in the last couple of months. And I'm amazed in the summer, people are just, on the weekends, there's like 4 or 5 cars that are just there, and there's nobody in the park.
What time of day is it?
Middle of the day.
Yeah, and
So I think
there's
people
nobody in
just-
the park.
I don't think the restaurant is open. I think
So it
it's,
may not be the restaurant.
Yeah.
And again, I'm not looking to shove them over onto East Street either, because we had issues on East Street.
so does anybody care? I mean, I don't know if I really care.
So
Has anyone complained that they can't park there because they want to use the park type?
I have not had any complaints from people saying that they can't use the park. You know, it's kind of the chicken and the egg situation, though. If there was a parking place there, maybe somebody would pull in and park and use it. I suppose they could go over and park out on East Street if they wanted to and walk across the street. So I walk up and down the street quite often. I see it. Frustrates me personally. But as I said, I'm not looking to make a problem. And maybe we just say until we get complaints, we just leave it be and address it down the road if we have to.
Yeah. That'd be my suggestion as well.
Just keep an eye on it. Yeah.
Okay. All right, good, thank you. The other FYI, as far as parking is concerned, I just want to bring to your attention, the Hunger Mountain Trailhead on Sweet Road, if you're familiar with that, there's a small parking lot there, 20, 25 cars. On the weekends, this time of year especially, there's a lot of parking along Sweet Road because the parking lot is full. And just as an aside, 15 years ago, or whatever it was, when the people who owned the property,
Was that other
the
lot?
old quarry there,
Yeah.
it went up for sale. I called the state parks folks and said, you ought to buy that, at least the frontage, and create an additional parking lot. No, that's not in our master plan, and somebody else bought it, and now, they're going to be developing some housing up there. And somewhat, I have a pretty strong feeling about who it is, but last week somebody told me that Sweet Road had been blocked off, and I got an email from Charles Safford, the manager in Stowe, saying he got a report that there was a barricade across the road. Well, the barricade is not across the road, it's not blocking through traffic, but someone has banged stakes into the road, and then they've stretched a rope between it, and they've got all kinds of signs up, most of which say no parking, but there is one sign that says reserved parking. So I have taken action. I've sent a letter today telling the person to take the obstruction out of the right-of-way. You can't have that in the right-of-way. I mean, in fairness to him, it's way over near the tree line, but it's still in the travel portion of the right-of-way, and you just can't allow people just to, bang stakes into the town road and put ropes up. So I've asked him to take it down. My expectation is it won't be taken down, and we'll have to take some additional action after that. But I just wanted you to be aware of it in case you hear about it.
So, is there any action being taken on how to resolve the problem? Because I've been down through there before. I suspect I know what this person is trying to do. I mean, it is just chucker block full.
Well, he's got a sign. I took pictures of him. I left my phone in the other room now. There is a sign that he's banged onto a tree. The tree is also in the highway right away, but I don't care about the signs, and I don't care about the tree is probably in our right of way. But he has one sign there, and it says something to the effect, if you're concerned about the lack of parking at this trailhead, please call the governor's office. State and town officials are responsible for the problem that's here. And he says that, if an emergency vehicle had to get through here with cars parked on both sides of the road, it's going to be difficult. And that all makes sense until you realize that one of his signs points and says reserved parking. And so he's got parking along the road there that he's trying to direct people to. I included in the letter, I said, if the parking is problematic, and I've seen the vehicles parked there on the road. I travel through the waterworks when I'm going to Stowe quite often in the summer months. And I've seen the cars parked along both sides of the road there. And, I think you can get a fire truck through, and it's not anything that I've ever believed was such of a problem that I had to bring it here. But I included in the letter, I said, if you believe that there is a problem with this parking and you would like to have it addressed, please let me know. I'll get you on the Selectboard agenda. An ordinance that prohibits parking is something that could be considered. Now, we don't have such an ordinance right now, and just so you know, I know we've got the police on the issue here, but Bill Woodruff mentioned this to Trooper Rick
Ostrom.
And he did go up there and attempt to talk to the person last week. No one answered the door, though, when he knocked. Anyway, if you hear about it, I just want you to know I will be working to get this out of there, and it does need to come down. It can't be allowed to to just be left there. And there's, you know, if somebody hits it and there's a problem, you know, it's our right of way, and we're going to.
Do you think that the parking lot needs to be expanded by the state to get people?
I wish it could be. I don't know if they have the land to do it.
Well, years ago, when that other lot was open, there was a lot of parking.
They had a lot of parking.
Yeah.
It was, part of it was in the state's sanctioned lot, and then part of it was in a lot that was owned by someone else who didn't mind that people parked there.
Yeah.
But when he sold it, the guy that bought it put boulders up across there, and now everybody's parking along the street, and the state then wouldn't buy it. So.
I'll have to go back up and familiarize myself, but is there, if you were to just try to push all of the parking onto one side of the road, is there a pretty good distance of, do you think that the traffic could all, I mean, they're about to hike
If we
it.
parked on one side and didn't park on both,
Right.
you could navigate that.
There is adequate room in most places, even when they park on both sides. You have to slow down, and you don't want to, crash into something. If a big fire truck had to get up there, it might be
But
problematic.
worst come to worst, we could try to push it all onto
If one side of the road was prohibited. So anyway, we may have to revisit this issue, but I just want you to understand, I'm trying to take action right now to get rid of this ropes and stakes in our roads. So.
Thank you.
Okay, well, that, other
we added
than
the
Mark's
police.
request,
Yes, yeah.
right, for somewhat of an
Oh, an
update.
update.
So Mark can probably do a better job of updating than I can, but the contract went into effect on July 1st. And one of the troopers actually was on annual leave, he was on vacation that first week, so the day shift really didn't start the first week of July. The afternoon shift, which is Tuesday through Saturday, they started that first week and have been out there. The gentleman who was on vacation was back last week. I saw him patrolling last week. I have had no comments yet from the public directly to me. I have seen them out on the streets. I think we have a meeting tomorrow. And Mark and I are going to be meeting with Lieutenant White and the two troopers tomorrow, just for a little bit of a meet and greet, so to speak. And at that meeting, we'll talk about areas that we know to be areas of concern. But other than that, why don't you, I don't know if you have anything else to say. But.
No, actually, you covered it pretty well. It's sort of a two-way street with the conversation. One, we want to share our expectations as well as give them some insight into different areas in the town and village that have presented issues for us over the years. But the other thing is also encouraging them to help us with that kind of stuff. I mean, enforcing the ordinances, if there's signage blockage, if there are certain conditions out there that would warrant some sort of action from their perspective, we certainly want to hear that from them. So the two troopers that are working this project, they want to be here, and I think that's going to make a huge difference to the community to be able to interact with folks like that.
Yeah. And I think I mentioned it at the last meeting, but again, in case I didn't, we have provided some office space for them to work out of the fire stations, but that's what it is. It's office space for them to work. It is not a place where the public comes and knocks on the door or makes an appointment to see a trooper. We made it plain to them that, the fire station is really the fire station. We can make some space in there so you can have a place to make a phone call or, get on your computer and do a little work, and that's fine, but it's not a place that the public is going to come and go from. If they need to see a trooper, they can call the barracks as they normally would and either ask for someone to come to their house for whatever reason or make an appointment. But just
So that, yeah, I was wondering that. So that's because I've before gone over when something came up that I just like went over. So if anyone would ever ask me, they call the barracks.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
And they've got access to both stations, so probably for the most part they'll be down here, but they also have access to the center station, and particularly when we have the construction going on down here, that may work out to be handier for them anyway.
Can we put that information on our website so people know? Because I have a feeling people are going to want to know how to contact.
Okay, that's a reasonable suggestion.
I have one question, and maybe it's a non-issue, but they are patrolling in state police cars, and just there are other state police officers that are going through the community that aren't acting as Waterbury police officers in those moments. So, and maybe I guess there's a difference between like an emergency or just like a non-emergency, but still want to talk to a police officer situation where you don't necessarily want to be flagging down a state police officer for something that's a non-emergency. Where in the other scenario, it's like in the past, especially downtown, I've gone over and talked to the police officers about something I saw either, on the street because I lived on it or whatever else, to just like, hey, can you keep an eye on that? Or I noticed something that maybe we should keep an eye on. And I don't know how you do that when you don't necessarily know if they're acting police officers for Waterbury or if they're state police officers.
No, it wouldn't matter. It wouldn't matter at all. The troops at Middlesex are all well aware of this project here. The thing about the through traffic, though, is that the headquarters building is here. So
right.
You get folks from Bennington and Derby and St. Albans and everywhere else that are driving through. So if someone is, if one of the cruisers is parked along the street side somewhere and somebody walks up, even if they aren't one of the Waterbury troopers, they would certainly pass on that information and everything. So
have we talked about labeling the car either through a magnet or?
It's not going to happen.
Okay.
Yeah. No, you had talked about that before, but the branding with the state police is such that
It is what it
stays
is.
like that.
You can't alter it.
Yeah. No, but when we first looked at it, we talked about that a bit.
Yeah, I just remember where that
went. Yeah.
So I don't know if during this conversation there, it's obvious that, well, it's obvious to me because I live there, but Gupta Road is a hot spot.
Yeah.
You know the accident that they had, the young gal had. And,
Yeah. There's
and
some
then the other
fresh
day-
carve marks over there from the other day, yeah.
And then the other day, I come down around that corner by Fishman's. I was doing the speed limit, and there was a red sedan behind me, and apparently they felt that I wasn't doing fast enough. So the minute I come around that corner, boy, they were out and by me and going.
Yeah.
But it's great. It's great to know that they're around.
What's the update on that speed light that we
Yeah,
approved?
so I actually talked to Bill Woodruff and Steve today about it. I've had some personal issues, and Steve was on vacation last week, and we forgot about it. It would have been nice if we could have put it on tonight's agenda, but we have it scheduled for the first meeting in August. We'll come in. The basic update is from the person at V-Trans who reviewed the information that we had from the tube counter from the Regional Planning Commission, that all the signage that we talked about is reasonable, and they are going to be willing to put those flashing lights up as you enter the area of the green. We want to present all the information to the board, and we'll do that at your next meeting. Okay.
So that just brought to mind too, is there any chance we could have Bill come in or you update us on, I know there's been some changes on what we're planning on doing as far as asphalt work and bridge work and...
Well, there's not too many changes. I have a brief report I'll give you now. Are you done with the police issue?
Sure,
Okay.
I think so.
As I think most of you know, Celia was out. She had an emergency surgery and was out on disability for about 6 weeks. She's back now. Last week she worked some part-time days, and this week she's back full-time. In her absence, they've been continuing to work on the projects that we're moving towards. I reviewed our budget situation with Bill Woodruff last week and basically told him that from my perspective, it looked like all the roads that we had planned to pave this year still look like we could do them, given where we are with the budget. If we have to cut back, the road that we'll probably cut back on is the asphalt from Main Street to the trash place down on River Road going to the ice center. We're going to do that stretch just past the Maple Fields or whatever it is there. And if we have to cut back on one road, we'll do that. Right now, the plan is, if weather works right, we will do the paving in Waterbury Center next week. So that's McNeil Road, which will be new pavement there.
Is that just a grind and repave, or is that just overlay?
It's all gravel now.
That's a gravel road now.
Oh, McNeil Road. Oh,
Yeah,
I was thinking.
going into Jim's Pizza there.
Yeah.
So we're going to pave that road. We'll do the Newland Flats Trailer Park area there, and then we'll pave Loomis Hill from Main Street down to the bridge. And then if you've been up Loomis Hill at all, we've changed 9 culverts on Loomis Hill between Maple Street over to the bridge, and then we've changed a couple others up to Hubbard Farm Road. And the ones that are on up the hill, we'll leave those open a little bit longer for compaction. The really bad section just below Hubbard Farm Road around the corner as you're going up from, from the Jaime Myers farm up around that corner where it's really bad. We are going to overlay that this year just to smooth that out so that people don't have to slow down to 10 miles an hour there, and it will help as far as the plowing in the winter.
So is the, from the corner of Loomis Hill to the bridge, is that just an overlay, or is it a grind and repave?
I'm pretty sure it's just an overlay. I don't know that for certain right off the top of my head. So we'll do that next week, and then later on in the summer we'll come back in. They've been changing all the catch basins, and I think they finished today, if not today, tomorrow on Whizzle Mountain. And then they've got to rebuild a couple of the sewer basins on that street. And then we'll go in there and we'll pave that as well. And then sidewalks should start later this month. I think we're going to do part of the sidewalk here on Winooski Street, and then we'll do one side of Butler Street, I believe. And we're hoping to start that before the end of the month. If not, it will be right after the 1st of August. So that's the update on that stuff for them.
Well, we certainly can't complain about the weather conditions we've had compared to last year, so the progress is, weather certainly helped the progress.
They're making decent progress. We also did get the final gravel resurfacing on Barnes Hill done. That was done several weeks ago, so we accomplished that. George Austin, you probably have seen, has been working most recently on the bridge here at Stowe Street. If you remember that abutment on the Route 100 side of that bridge had quite a bit of spalling on it. It's kind of funny because the bridge has been rated functionally deficient by the state for years and years and years. They inspected it last year, and then we got them back in there early this year because Alec was noticing some things happening. So they inspected it, and it had some structural deficiencies, and we addressed that. It's about a $20,000 project. Austin went in and and chipped out a lot of the bad concrete on that abutment, and then they drilled holes in, they drove rods in, and then they formed it up and then poured a new wall there. So that's all good, but now it goes back down on the state's priority list because it's in better condition than it was before. So you can't win for losing, you know. He's going to be working soon, if not this week. He'll be doing the log cabin bridge up on Guptill Road. And then he also was, he got the job for the big Hubbard Farm culvert. You authorized that a few weeks ago. So we're making progress on those projects. If you remember, on Perry Hill, just this side of Perry Lee, there's that wetland area, there's a big culvert there, and we had a washout there 2 summers ago with one of the heavy rainstorms, and you know, that was a culvert where the state came in and said, oh, you need a whole hydrological study to do it. Probably most years, every day, the water that goes under the road there could go through a 12-inch culvert. But when you get the real big gully washer up on the mountain, you need a huge culvert for it to go through. So that project is kind of, we've got our permits for that. It's funny, you know, even on the Hubbard Farm culvert, which is an upland culvert, we needed to get an Army Corps of Engineer permit for that structure to go in there. And this one on Perry Hill is the same thing. It's looking to me like the Perry Hill project is not going to go this year. It's funded, it's ready, but from our perspective, it's ready, but there's still permitting issues and things that have not happened, and it's looking to me it's going to go another year. It's not causing us any problems at all. It's just, it needs to be, there's a temporary culvert in there now that Agency of Natural Resources approved and said you could put this temporary culvert in, but you have to do this hydrological study, and then you're going to have to put in the other one subject to funding, and the funding just hasn't been released yet. So we'll do it when we can, but I'm thinking it's not going to be this year.
So would the funding be released this year?
I don't know.
Oh, because I was just thinking in terms of cost going up. You know, if with all the tariffs and going in place and all that steel issues and
right, yeah. So anyway, I'm thinking that one's not going to happen. But it's funny, you drive by these little rinky-dink streams and that the Army Corps of Engineers, I would think they have more important things to worry about. But
you would think.
Anyway, so that's the update I have for you, Chris.
Okay.
There's a meeting tomorrow night on about the Stowe Street Bridge. It's a separate thing. I guess something Steve was doing, but that's going to be here. I don't know whether it's of any interest to anyone or not, but.
The same one at Route 100.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's that. He's probably giving information about what I just said. That you know, it's high on the priority list for the Regional Planning Commission. When you stand there, they had last week. There was a scoping study as part of the bike ped project that we had there. V-Trans did come out. Fortunately, they were there when 2 of the link buses went through, so they kind of see that dynamic and that dance that happens when the buses are especially trying to turn from Lincoln Street onto the bridge. It's fun to watch, as long as you're not on the bridge yourself. Anyway, it may be that, Mark. It may be an update on where we are with that project.
I think it's here.
I have a question. So it's regarding backing up to the Guptill Road, the study that's being done by V-Trans that we talked about in the signage and flashing speed sign. So those improvements would be paid for some kind of V-Trans?
Yeah, that rural roads project, we asked that if they could be incorporated
Right.
into that project. And I believe, and what they told us was, if you do a traffic count,
Right.
and if the warrants are there, we'll consider it. So the warrants are there. The information I have right now, Jane, is that they will put it in
Right.
as part of that project, but we'll hear
Okay.
more about that.
Now, they had done a,
And I did, I'm sorry to interrupt,
Oh.
but our next
Which
meeting,
one?
our next meeting isn't scheduled until August 6th, because there's 5 Mondays in July. So the next meeting is August 6th. When I talked to Bill Woodruff about this project, I said, call the guy at V-Trans, ask if we have him here on August 6th, can we move forward at that point? And if for some reason the deadline is before that, I told him that we'd have to have a
Right.
special meeting. And if we need to, we'll have a special meeting, but I'm hoping we can have a couple weeks off and
okay.
not meet until the 6th.
Yeah, I am. I'm going to be away on the 6th. I'm sure you can all carry on without me. But a couple things. One, when we met out there about the traffic, the speed, we met and looked around at the green, and then you forwarded the overall study that was done by V-Trans, which showed also the
The slip
green,
lane
the
and
triangle,
everything.
the slip lane, and this. In some areas at the corner of Howard Ave, there's a lot of excess pavement. There actually had been an island there years ago that was removed, so it's like 150 feet across if you're a pedestrian. So they showed a tighter area, and it would be money to do that.
I don't think there's money in this project.
I know there
to do
isn't.
that.
That's like a future thing. But there are these Better Connections grants at V-Trans that I heard about when I went to a meeting in Stowe about 6 weeks ago. That was 8 weeks ago. They're doing this generalized planning for the Route 100 corridor. And I don't know if you remember, I've been going to, and Barb Barr went, and Steve lost speech. And they've had them in Stowe in the municipal office with a whole bunch of stakeholders. So the Better Connections grants are, I just looked it up, I don't know what the deadlines are for 18 or 19, but they would cover something like this. They're like small local projects, and it says they have there might be some other things too. It's only a 10% local match for these. So I can send the link to Steve and to you tomorrow to look
Yeah,
at.
I'll mention it to Steve, but if you can send a link that do that.
And I think it would relate to these kind of projects. Thanks.
Okay, is there anything else from anybody? Hearing, seeing none, then how about a motion to adjourn?
I will make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
Okay,
Third.
all those in favor?
Hi.
Aye.
Thank you, Bill.